Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Buckeye Breakdown. This is Owen Smith and Matthew Warner back after another win against Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Matthew, how are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. We got past uh, the maybe look ahead game, and for a little while it looked like we were looking ahead, but got out of it pretty unscathed. And now it's the big matchup that nobody thought would be a big matchup at the beginning of the year, which is super exciting. I love when teams like Indiana find themselves in these situations and like face this how good are we kind of game. I always think they're fun games to tune into. Obviously, with us being the Buckeyes, we've got a clear statement that we would like to make, and so I'm excited. It feels good to be where we're at, and looking forward to Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah, we were able to get through it. Only bangers from here on out, even though the game won't be the top five matchup or, that it's been the past couple of years. Certainly always the game. And then, of course, potential for the Big Ten championship if we take care of business. And then playoffs, again, whatever that looks like. I mean, I guess I'll ask this question just to start things off. Do you think that the Buckeyes can lose this game this weekend and still make the playoffs? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
some people are telling me that we should be concerned. Maybe specific IU fans are saying that the Buckeyes, if they lose this game, they're out of the playoff. And I'm like, to me, that's a ridiculous statement. But I just wanted to get that out there.
I mean, if we're talking about the SEC right now, and okay, we're going to get possibly 4 2-loss teams in. There's no way you can look at Ohio State and say, okay, they lost by 1 on the road to the number 1 team and they lost to the number 5 team in the country, and keep them out of the conversation in like a 9-10 seed kind of spot, when the other 2-loss teams in the SEC have losses to like an Arkansas, a Vanderbilt. They've got worse knocks on their record than the Buckeyes would have, at this point. So no, I think even if we lose, it puts us in a good spot. I've had people asking me this question, if you had a crystal ball, is the Buckeyes losing the absolute worst thing for them?
Dude, this thought was going through my head as you were talking.
Because you get basically a bye week ahead of, you're going to have to win 3 games anyways.
Right.
Obviously you want to win this game and go beat Oregon and get the bye. That's the ultimate goal. But if you lose it, it's like, all right, well, we saved ourselves a week. And once again, very crystal clear, I want to say this. I don't want to lose this game in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I want to hang 100 on them, just with how much the conversations I know, especially in our circles with both of us living in Indiana, we're around quite a few IU fans who I didn't really know were big football fans.
Yeah, I thought they were Notre Dame football fans. Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, no, I agree. But there is the other element of it is like, you don't, because there's a good chance even if we go and beat Oregon, like there's a chance that you play them again in the college football playoff, and it's like maybe you don't expend all of that energy in that moment. Maybe you go expend it later on in the playoff or whatever. But no, got to beat IU, got to take care of business, got to add another win to Ryan Day's top 5 graphic that just seems to always get out there.
This one won't count because IU hasn't played anybody.
That's the thing too, that again, just ranting about IU fans, and probably not as relevant for most listeners, but it's like, oh, well, if we win, if we lose, we weren't supposed to win this game. We're happy with how the season's gone. It's like, dude, you guys are a top 5 team. You're gonna tell me you're gonna be okay with a loss? Come on now, come on.
Yeah, makes it. if he loses it, it's like there's another top 5. If he wins it, it's like, well, I mean, it was IU, IU, like it can't really count it.
Whatever.
But no, it's fun. So let's talk about not really much to say about the Northwestern game. Sloppy start. Another one of those, like, you're watching the defense and, you see all the graphics heading into the week of Ohio State's defense is just this elite, unstoppable force. And then you're sitting there watching it and you're like, this is the team they've been talking about all week. And Northwestern was just gashing them up and down the field. Yeah. It took a red zone turnover to, like, stop the bleeding a little bit. But then, just as the Buckeyes always seem to do in these games, like, the switch went off and all of a sudden we were scored on 3 out of 4 drives, and went into the half 21-7 feeling much better than I think we were thinking it would after the first quarter. So
yeah, certainly.
Any thoughts, concerns, things you saw on Saturday that, like, maybe prior to that game you were like, now I'm thinking about this a little bit more as like a weakness or a point that we really need to improve on if we want to achieve our dreams?
Yeah, I think the cornerback play is a little concerning. Denzel was a little concerning with just, we already had the Oregon game. You already had the big matchup, and we know how that went. But just some of the play wasn't just up to what we expected, especially from a guy. This was the guy representing the team that publicly said natty or bust, right? So, like, you kind of have to. You're setting that standard for the team yourself. Like, this isn't a fan expectation or some other, maybe an offensive players. Like, this is you, the defense, you, the cornerback, you, the representative of the team. And just to be kind of in that, just having that weird year and a couple performances just makes me a little concerned. I think coupled with that, like, it seems like there's more pressure coming, but it also seems like some guys are, like, whiffing on that pressure a little bit from the defensive line and linebackers, and it's just like, take that to an IU, take that to a Oregon in the Big Ten championship or any of the playoff opponents. It's like you're gonna get exposed. You're gonna get exposed. So it's like those are outside of that, everything else looked good, but I was pretty, like, okay, a little concerned more than I have been.
I was trying to think of, like, where have I felt this feeling before with, like, an Ohio State defensive guy. It was the Sean Wade year.
Yes.
Where, like, everybody was like, oh, God, this guy is going to be an absolute force. It came back, and he was one of those guys that played in the nickel, and then they moved him outside. And all of a sudden, now, this is different, though. Like, Denzel hasn't moved spots. The guy that, he was dominant last year. And so I keep on having this, like, he's going to figure it out. Like, things are going to click. It's going to come. But, like, we're 10 games into the season. 10 games in, 2 bye weeks that you had to work on things. And, like, it seems like I was talking to my dad during the game. I'm like, why does it seem like every 10 to 15 yard play, you just see number 10 around the ball? Like, not always his fault, but it's like it seems like he's always in the vicinity of, like, just not making the play or just a tad bit behind. But I still, somebody asked me, they were like, hey, I don't watch a ton of Ohio State football. I thought your guys' defensive backs were really good this year. And I was like, yeah, the guy that we kind of thought had a chance to be a first rounder who came back, and I'm like, he's played himself into a 6th rounder, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, he's really done some harm to his draft stock, but he's got a really good chance to go lock up against IU, go lock up against Michigan, Oregon, and where all eyes will be on him after what happened in the first game. And then you get to go play in, he's got a good chance to rattle off 5 really impressive games to help his stock. So I'm excited to kind of keep an eye on That's like the one area that, like you said, linebacker play has been spotty at different times this year. Sonny Styles played really well on Saturday. He played very downhill, just felt like it was like natural for him, where sometimes this year it didn't really feel that way. Safety play is still just so much fun to watch. And I thought our defensive line got better pressure. And I thought some of the Jim Knowles schemed up pressure where he's dropping, JTT into coverage and other guys are going, that seemed to click a little bit more in this game, where when we saw it in the past, we were like, what the hell, what the hell are we doing here? So DBs is still probably the only concern for me. Offensively, is there anything that's kind of top of mind for you?
I mean, there is the Jeremiah Smith ankle. Hopefully everything's okay, right? Like he did seem, that was a weird,
he is human,
but he is human. Yeah. But hopefully it's nothing. I don't think it's anything. I mean, he was in the game after that, so I don't think it's anything too serious, but just hope that he gets back to full speed there. But I think the right side of the line seemed to have a couple issues here and there, but overall pretty confident in the offensive line for what it is. We can't change anything on that. And I think Donovan Jackson settled in pretty well to that left tackle spot. And yeah, I mean, even if Jeremiah Smith does lose a step, it's you got Carnell Tate, who had an absolutely, it was just an awesome performance.
I know it's been talked about a lot, but obviously the story, him being from Chicago, everything he's gone through as a young man, getting 2 scores and making 2 incredible catches. The contested slant in the middle of the field was incredible. And then the catch for the touchdown, which I don't know if you were watching at that time. I know you were traveling a little bit, that none of the fans got to see live.
Yes. No, that was I was what a catch by Carnell. Yeah, I was able to see that one. And that was, oh my God. But anyways,
But no, I was super happy for him. Something I've been a little puzzled about just in the wake of last week. Brandon Ennis not being back for punt returns. You've got Travion Henderson, Caleb Downs. Do you think that's just them trying to find a little bit of a spark in the return game? Do you think they're just throwing new things out there? Has Ennis kind of lost that role on the team, or do you just think that's them trying different things, trying to get the ball in the hands of different guys to see if they make a play?
Yeah, I think I have to imagine there's probably something more maybe in practice, right? Maybe Ennis has had a couple mistakes. I mean, we know the whole Dallin Hayden story over the years, where it's the talk was always that he fumbled in practice. Clearly it didn't happen in the game, but that clearly impacted when he was put in the game or not. Yeah. So it makes me think something like that. And I mean, it's you can go replace him with Caleb Downs or Trevion Henderson or Emeka or whoever, right? There's plenty of options there, but it has been interesting. And it just tells me that there's maybe something else going on behind the scenes that we're just not privy to.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking back to the first 2 games that we watched this year, we're Brandon Ennis might be the guy back there. He looks like he's a step away from breaking one. Which we still have not seen this year, which I'm disappointed in. But that's just been one thing that's kind of been on my mind, especially after he played really well and came up with big plays against Penn State in a tough environment. He stepped up and played his role really well. It's just been a little odd to see him kind of moving out of that position that he's been in all year. So who knows? Like you said, it very well could just be you muffed a punt in practice and hey, that costs us, could cost us the game in the future. And we're going to, make you sit out and think about it.
Yep.
Okay. So on to IU. Obviously IU coming off of a bye week. Ohio State for all intents and purposes has had relatively 2 easy weeks in a row. We've seen backups in both those games. They've kind of escaped both of them without too many major concerns of injury. Obviously, we referenced the Jeremiah Smith injury, kind of coming up on that ankle, but he ended up playing for the rest of that game. The couple possessions that happened afterwards. So 2 pretty healthy teams at this point in the year coming into it. I know Indiana has some injuries with their wideouts, but other guys seem to have stepped up pretty well. How are you feeling? Like, what's your confidence level going into this? Is it still sitting at 10.5 or is it 9.5 now?
I would say cautiously confident and optimistic here, right? Like I think that the thing that does just overall scare me about the game is when it's all said and done, IU truly has nothing to lose here. Like, I think that you should definitely, not that they're viewing this game as like, well, if we lose, we lose. It's like, no, I mean, you definitely want to go win the game, but it's like, you are the, emerging star. You're not the established veteran. And you know what I mean? Like, you guys
they're playing with house money right now.
Yes.
Like it is, they have put together this dream season. And if the worst thing that happens to them is they go out and pull out all the stops to try and beat Ohio State on the road and they fall short, like, they live with that. If you ask any IU fan at the beginning of the year if they'd be okay with that being the outcome, and they'll be a college football playoff team.
Yeah. Like, they're not losing to Purdue. So like, they're only going to be a one loss, at worst, they're a one loss team without, with resting on Big Ten championship weekend, right? Best case, they're undefeated going into the Big Ten championship in Indiana
in a home game. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a home game.
Yeah.
So I think you said it, like, and it's like this for every Ohio State matchup. It's like it for every Alabama or Georgia, any team that comes into those stadiums. It is the Super Bowl for them. They're going to pull out everything they possibly can to get out of there with a win. I think players are elevated to a certain extent and play a little bit better than you traditionally see it. I mean, you even saw it last week with Northwestern's quarterback, probably one of the better performances he's had all year. Like you just see those things happen pretty frequently. Guys are excited. It does make me a little nervous of, like, the offensive line, now that we've kind of gelled a little bit. They went into to Penn State and kind of, I won't say dominated, but really held their own against a good defensive front. And I think they face a pretty nice challenge again this upcoming weekend. So, like, what does that look like? Can we get the run going? Those are kinds of things I'll be looking at early. I still feel pretty confident in Ohio State here. I think it's actually sitting at 12.5, which surprises me a little bit.
It's already. I thought it was, last I saw it was 10.5, so it's gone even more.
It was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it opened up after the weekend at 12.5. So,
okay,
that feels like a lot of points for a top 5 matchup. I don't know. I don't know if that's people not giving Indiana enough credit, or maybe we are giving them too much credit from like a public perspective. But
I think there's a couple, so here's what I'll say. IU doesn't pick their schedule, like they've played the schedule that they've been given, right? So like they've taken care of business, they've beat expectations. I think they've also had but with that, there's kind of two things. With that, they haven't, they were kind of down to the wire with Michigan at home, and we know what that Michigan team is, right? Yeah. That's like the toughest challenge that they've faced. They've taken care of Washington. Clearly they had the big win against Nebraska, but like, again, they haven't had have they beat a top 25 team? You know what I mean? It's like, again, they can't control who they play. They've taken care of business, but at the same time, they haven't beat a top 25 team. And to go try to do that against the number 2 team in the nation is a little difficult on the road. So I think that's just a big part of it is Yeah, it's like
their best win is against a 6-5 Washington Huskies team.
Yeah,
like as far as just records go.
No,
6-5. I mean, no. and I don't, Washington's not great. I think the best football team they've played against is Michigan. And like you said, Michigan took them down to the wire, and Michigan shot themselves in the foot a handful of times, and could have had themselves in a much better position in that game. But that's been kind of their MO all year, especially on the offensive side. So, it's one of those hard to gauge because they haven't really played an elite level football team. And it's like, how do you account for like we talked about, like the bump in energy, them kind of knowing what this means for Ohio State, what this means for the future of their program, what this means for the future of Curt Cignetti, who just re-signed, signed a pretty decent extension that he's got like 90,000 ways he can get out of anytime he wants, but he's got the extension. So like it means a lot. Like if Curt Cignetti beats Ohio State with what he inherited, and things start to look like, we might be able to recruit well, we might be able to get guys to buy into what we're doing here at IU. Like, how does a job like Florida look to Curt Cignetti? Like, how does it look? Does it really sway him too much? So I think this is a really big game obviously for both programs. I'm excited for it. I think if you'd have told me this is the game I was like more amped up for in November than any other, that I would have told you you're a liar. I'm going to, just for listeners, I'm going to be doing kind of like a 15-20 minute kind of breakdown of this matchup as well. Talk a little bit about what IU does on the offensive side of the ball, what to expect defensively, how they might, work to try and contain guys like Jeremiah Smith and Igbuka and the running back duo. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit on Wednesday morning. So we'll tweet that out on our socials and let you know when that is out for a little bit kind of deeper dive into the matchup.
Do you think not to get too ahead of it, but do you think the Buckeyes cover the spread? Basically win by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I do. The way I see this is like, you kind of saw it in their matchup with Michigan, where like you could tell the speed defensively that they were up against was something they hadn't quite seen yet. And this is without Will Johnson. Like, they're not playing against their best unit. I think that's going to be a little bit of a shock to, a QB who is a veteran QB, but hasn't seen that all year. I think it's going to be a little different for their offensive line, who hasn't had to put up with, the JTTs and Jack Sawyers week in and week out, with Tylee coming up the middle. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a shock to them. Just the speed and athleticism that Ohio State has on both sides of the ball. But we've also seen it where like that speed and athleticism looks flat and doesn't do what they're supposed to do. But I think if Ohio State understands the magnitude of this game and what it means to Buckeye fans, they're going to come out ready to play. And I think that's going to cause some issues for Indiana and gives Ohio State a good chance to cover the spread.
For sure. I mean, this may be a dumb statement. I'm just glad that they are where they're at so that this isn't overlooked. And I think it also helps that there's not a lot of look ahead towards Michigan necessarily. So it's kind of a perfect storm.
I'm actually I'm glad that this is in front of Michigan, because we've seen the ugly week before Michigan where it's like, don't shoot yourselves in the foot thinking about, the game. This is a good opportunity. It's a really strong test. And then then you get to just shift focus and, go worry about whatever the hell it is Michigan is trying to accomplish.
Whatever it may be.
Do you think You think Will Johnson's season is over for Michigan? I've been thinking about this. He's hasn't been playing, seems to be hurt. I don't know what he gets coming back now.
Yeah, I mean, unless you just how bought in are you to the rivalry, right? Because it's one more game.
The one thing I guess I could see is if he's like, I want to put on tape what it looks like when I've got Jeremiah Smith or Ikbuka in a man-to-man coverage. I want to kind of showcase exactly how good I am. There's also the other side of that where you're coming off an injury if you're not super fully healthy, and then you put on tape, getting smoked. That doesn't do much for you. But I agree. I could see him possibly coming back for one. So only other thing I was going to kind of mention on this one is just college football playoff, kind of what it's looking like right now. Obviously, we finally got BYU a little bit out of the picture. We've got Miami, which we didn't talk about a ton last week. Miami finally takes a loss. I'm saying it again, and I said it earlier, in the year, but whoever ends up getting that 5 spot, isn't the conference champion, but slides into that 5 spot, man, are they going to be in a good position. And so I think I know who it's going to be. I think it's either going to be Penn State or Notre Dame. How do you value a 1-loss Penn State to Ohio State non-conference champion over a Notre Dame whose 1 loss is to NIU, but they've played really good football for since that game? They essentially just dismantled everybody. They got another top 25 win against Navy, who obviously is not as good as we thought. That's the one position I'm eyeballing. And I'm also curious your thoughts on Ohio State wins out and loses in a neutral field again in a close one to Oregon. Do they immediately miss out on a 5 spot if their only loss on the year is to number 1 Oregon and then number 1 Oregon?
I would say on that piece, I think it depends on. I think it probably depends on what that game looks like. If it's a close loss down to the wire, a heartbreaker, whatever, missed field goal, or not getting in a position to score, or defense gives up a play, whatever that may be. I think you can make the case, but I think if it's not coming down to the wire, I think that they would miss out on that spot with it being 2 losses there. As far as Notre Dame, Penn State,
I think Penn State would most likely slide into that 5 spot.
Yeah, I'm just looking back at Notre. They have the Texas A&M win early in the year, but they also.
You just can't lose to NIU. You can't
yeah.
So
and also not have they have Army this weekend, but it's not like their USC game is going to mean a whole lot because of what USC is and their Florida State matchup wasn't what it could have been. So you kind of miss out on those marquee wins outside of the early season, Texas A&M. So
I've been trying to explain this to my friends. I'm like, look, there's a reality where Ohio State could clinch the 1 seed, and their first matchup could be against 8 or 9 seed Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, A&M, however that SEC pans out.
Yeah.
Penn State could get the 5 seed, and it could go Boise State, Miami, or SMU. One of those 2 teams, and then play whoever comes out on the other side. I'm like, God, I kind of wish that we were in the other situation. I know it's 1 less game, and you have to obviously play whoever's in front of you, but it's frustrated me looking at that 5 seed all year, just knowing how bad the ACC and Big 12 are.
Yeah, Well, the other scenario, of course, is Oregon loses Big Ten championship, and then they just have the sweet spot pass. Of course, they miss out on a bye week and all of that. But
yeah,
I mean, yeah, they could.
But I mean, Oregon showed a little bit of like some chinks in the armor for the first time in several weeks against Wisconsin, and I think that was maybe one of those like welcome to the Big Ten moments where it's like, you know, playing at Wisconsin, playing at Iowa is always going to be one of those like really hard fought games. And if you don't show up that night, they're going to make you play the full 60 minutes. So
yeah,
well, good deal.
Good deal. Well, you'll be back on Wednesday, offensive preview. Of course, we'll be back to recap it, or not offensive preview. You'll just be recap.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of both sides. Yeah.
Yep. So that'll be good. And then, we'll be back to recap it next Monday. And then, man, it's just going to be bangers from here on out. The episode's
I'm excited.
Going to be wildly emotional one way or the other. So
I'm going to be very, very excited.
But all right. Well, thank you all for listening. And we'll be back Wednesday and Monday. Thank you.
See y'all.